March 3rd, 1969, 10 p.m., the Central Highlands of Vietnam, 13 kilometers from the tri-border area where Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia meet. A remote Special Forces camp sits on a hilltop surrounded by jungle. Ben Het, 12 American Green Berets, 440 Montagnard irregulars, a battery of massive 175mm artillery, 4 M48 Patton tanks dug into defensive positions. Tonight they are about to make history, because creeping through the darkness toward them are North Vietnamese PT-76 light tanks, Soviet-made armoured vehicles with 76mm guns. This will be the first time American forces fight North Vietnamese tanks in direct combat. And this tank battle tonight is just the beginning. Just the opening round of a 60-day siege that will push this isolated camp to the absolute breaking point. This is the story of Ben Het, where Green Berets and Montagnards face tanks, artillery, sappers, and psychological warfare in one of the most intense sieges of the Vietnam War, where American armour proved its worth in jungle warfare, and where a handful of defenders held against overwhelming odds for 2 months, while the North Vietnamese tried to make this America's Dien Bien Phu. Ben Het exists for one reason: to monitor the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The camp sits in the western highlands of Con Tum province, overlooking infiltration routes from Cambodia and Laos into South Vietnam. 5th Special Forces Group Detachment. A 244 established the base in the early 1960s. The position is strategic but vulnerable. The nearest friendly base is Dak To, 15 kilometers to the southeast. Beyond that is Con Tum City, 53 kilometers away. Ben Het is isolated, exposed, a target, and everyone knows it. The camp itself is a typical Special Forces fortification: triangular perimeter, triple concertina wire, minefields, bunkers with interlocking fields of fire, mortar pits, a dirt airstrip for resupply, command bunkers deep underground. The Montagnard fighters are Highland tribesmen, Jarai people, fierce warriors who hate the Vietnamese communists. They fight alongside the Green Berets not for politics, but to protect their land and families. Many have their wives and children living in villages near the camp. This is their home. They will defend it. The artillery battery is what makes Ben Het truly dangerous to the North Vietnamese. M107 self-propelled guns, 175mm cannons that can reach deep into Cambodia and Laos. These guns interdict the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They hammer North Vietnamese supply columns, destroy base camps, make life hell for the enemy trying to move men and material south. The North Vietnamese want Ben Het silenced. They want those guns destroyed. They want the Green Berets dead and the Montagnards scattered. And in March 1969 they decide the time has come to take the camp by force, with tanks. Because if tanks can overrun a Special Forces camp, it sends a message. American positions are not safe. The war is changing. The North Vietnamese are bringing conventional warfare to the highlands, and they are bringing it tonight, November 1968. A helicopter pilot from 7th Squadron 17th Cavalry reports 4 unidentified tanks west of Ben Het near the Cambodian border. The report is never confirmed, but it plants a seed. American intelligence begins tracking North Vietnamese armour movements in the tri-border area. 4th Infantry Division reports multiple sightings. Something is building. By early 1969, the garrison at Ben Het has been reinforced. 440 CIDG personnel, 511 ARVN soldiers, 207 artillery troops, 25 American advisors, 2 M42 Duster self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, the artillery battery, and critically, 4 M48 Patton tanks from 1st Battalion 69th Armour Regiment Company B under Captain John Stovall. These tanks are the ace in the hole. 60-ton monsters with 90mm guns, thick armour, night vision equipment, infrared searchlights. The North Vietnamese do not know the tanks are here. That ignorance will cost them dearly. The tanks take up positions in late February. 3 Pattons dig into a hill facing west toward Cambodia. Hull-down positions where only the turrets are exposed. Perfect firing positions overlooking the likely avenue of approach. The 4th tank guards the left flank near the main camp, protecting the resupply route. Sergeant First Class Hugh Havermill commands one of the dug-in tanks. Staff Sergeant Jerry Jones leads another. These tankers are professionals, they know their business, and they spend the last days of February preparing for what they know is coming. Anti-tank mines are laid in the roads and trails around the camp. Fields of fire are cleared, range cards are prepared, Every crewman knows exactly where to shoot and what to expect. The waiting game begins. February 1969. The North Vietnamese begin shelling, heavy mortars, recoilless rifles, probing the defences. Company B takes 10 casualties. Then in early March, the shelling decreases. Suspicious. The calm before the storm. March 2nd. Night. Havermael and his crew hear something. Vehicular movement. Heavy engines. The distinctive sound of tracks grinding through the jungle. West of the camp, toward Cambodia. Havermael reports it to Stovall. The captain orders heightened alert. All tank crews stand to. Heat rounds are loaded. High explosive anti-tank ammunition designed to penetrate armour. The infrared searchlights are tested, night vision scopes are calibrated. If tanks are coming, they will come at night. The Americans will be ready. 9 p.m. March 3rd. Ben Het camp comes under recoilless rifle fire, heavy and accurate. Then at 9:30 the real bombardment begins. Mortars, artillery. The North Vietnamese are hammering the camp from multiple directions. Over the explosions and chaos, Havermael and Jones hear it again. Tracks, heavy engines, louder now, closer, multiple vehicles. This is it. Stovall orders all tanks to battle stations. The crews scramble to their positions. Loaders slam heat rounds into the breaches. Gunners peer through scopes, scanning the darkness to the west. Drivers rev engines ready to maneuver if needed. And then suddenly 800 meters to the southwest, an explosion. Massive. A flash of light that illuminates the jungle. An anti-tank mine. One of the mines laid by the defenders has been triggered, and in that flash of fire the Americans see exactly what they are facing. A PT-76 tank, Soviet-built, lightly armoured, designed as an amphibious reconnaissance vehicle, 14 tons, 76mm gun, thin armour that can be penetrated by 50 caliber rounds at close range. The burning tank illuminates 3 more PT-76s nearby and a BTR-50 armoured personnel carrier. The mine disabled the lead tank, but the column is still coming. Before the echo of the mine explosion fades, the burning PT-76 fires its gun. The round falls short of the American positions, but it announces the attack has begun. The other North Vietnamese vehicles open fire, muzzle flashes ripple across the jungle, at least 7 vehicles shooting, maybe more. The gunners count the flashes, 8, 9, 10, a full company of armour supported by infantry from the 66th NVA Regiment. The 4th Battalion 202nd Armoured Regiment has arrived to destroy Ben Het. Stovall orders illumination. The camp mortar section fires flares. Parachute flares pop overhead, bathing the battlefield in harsh white light. But the light cuts both ways. It helps the Americans see their targets, but it also helps the North Vietnamese aim. A CIDG patrol radios that they are observing an 8 to 15 vehicle column moving east toward the camp. This is a major armoured assault, bigger than anyone expected. The North Vietnamese are going all in. Stovall is climbing aboard Havermael's tank to coordinate the defence when a North Vietnamese HE round slams into the loader's hatch. The explosion is devastating. Stovall and Havermael are blown off the tank. Shrapnel tears into both men. The driver who was manning an external machine gun is killed instantly. The loader is killed. 2 men dead. The tank commander and the captain wounded, but the M48 itself is only lightly damaged, the armour held. The thick steel that protects American tankers just saved the vehicle from destruction. Jones sees what happened. He sprints through incoming fire to the damaged tank. Gets a new crew aboard. The Patton is back in the fight within minutes. Jones then runs to another M48 that cannot engage the main enemy force from its current position. Under fire, he directs it to maneuver to a new firing position. This is leadership. This is courage. Moving between tanks while North Vietnamese 76mm rounds are impacting all around him. Getting damaged vehicles back in action, repositioning for better fields of fire. Jones is fighting this tank battle like a chess match while shells explode around him. The American gunners acquire targets using the infrared searchlights and night vision scopes. Technology the North Vietnamese do not have. One gunner locks onto a vehicle silhouette next to the burning PT-76. He fires. The 90mm heat round streaks across 800 meters and detonates. The target explodes. Another PT-76 destroyed. Specialist 4 Eddie Davis is gunning another Patton. He tracks muzzle flashes, fires on the position. The 90mm gun roars. The round impacts. Another North Vietnamese vehicle erupts in flames. The American tanks are methodically destroying the enemy armor using superior optics, superior firepower, and superior training. The North Vietnamese tankers are brave, but they are fighting blind. They cannot see their targets clearly. They fire at muzzle flashes and hope. The Americans fire with precision, but the North Vietnamese are not helpless. One PT-76 gunner gets lucky, or skilled. He tracks an American muzzle flash and fires. The 76mm round streaks toward an M48. Direct hit on the turret. The explosion kills 2 crewmen instantly, wounds 2 more. The Patton is damaged but not destroyed. Again, the armor saves the vehicle. The thick turret prevented the round from penetrating completely. But 2 more Americans are dead. The price of this tank battle is being paid in blood. The surviving crew evacuates, medics scramble to treat the wounded under fire, and within minutes engineers are assessing whether the tank can be repaired. This is the nature of armoured combat. Brutal, quick, decisive. One hit can kill a crew. But a well-armoured tank can take hits and keep fighting. The battle rages for hours. North Vietnamese infantry attempts to assault the camp perimeter under cover of the tank fire. The CIDG fighters pour fire into the attackers. The M42 Dusters engage with their twin 40mm cannons. Autocannon fire rakes the jungle. Explosive shells airburst over North Vietnamese infantry positions. The artillery battery fires direct support missions. 175mm shells crash into enemy assembly areas. A C-47 Spooky gunships arrive overhead. Miniguns howl. 6,000 rounds per minute pour down from the sky into North Vietnamese positions. The combination of tank fire, artillery, anti-aircraft guns used in ground roll, and air support creates an impenetrable wall of fire. The North Vietnamese attack breaks, the tanks withdraw, the infantry pulls back. As dawn breaks on March 4th, the battlefield reveals the carnage. 2 PT-76 tanks destroyed. Smoking hulks, 1 BTR 50 APC destroyed. North Vietnamese bodies scattered around the wrecks. Blood trails leading back toward Cambodia where wounded were dragged away. Equipment abandoned, helmets, weapons. The Americans have won the first round. But this is not over. This is just the beginning. The March 3rd tank battle shocks the American command. North Vietnamese tanks attacking a Special Forces camp. This is new. This is escalation. If the enemy is willing to commit armour to Highland battles, what comes next? The camp is reinforced. More artillery, more ammunition. Engineers strengthen the bunkers. The damaged M48 is repaired and returned to service. The Americans prepare for the next attack. And it comes, but not immediately. The North Vietnamese pull back to lick their wounds. They lost tanks. They lost men. Their surprise armoured assault failed because they did not know American tanks were waiting. They will not make that mistake again. Instead, they will lay siege. They will surround Ben Het, cut it off, pound it with artillery, starve it. And when it is weakened, then they will assault with infantry and finish it. May 1969. The monsoon season arrives. Heavy rains, low clouds, reduced visibility. Perfect conditions for a siege. The North Vietnamese begin massing forces. The 28th NVA Regiment moves into position south of Ben Het. The 66th NVA Regiment positions north and west. The 40th Artillery Regiment supports with heavy mortars, rockets, and recoilless rifles. Intelligence estimates 3,000 North Vietnamese soldiers surrounding the camp. This is a major operation. The North Vietnamese are broadcasting on loudspeakers that Ben Het will be America's Dien Bien Phu. The reference is clear. In 1954, French forces at Dien Bien Phu were surrounded and besieged by Viet Minh troops. After 57 days, the French surrendered. The battle ended French colonial rule in Indochina. Now the North Vietnamese want to repeat that victory. Surround an isolated position. Cut it off. Force surrender or annihilation. Prove that American positions can be overrun. Break American will to fight in the Highlands. May 6th. The bombardment begins in earnest. 122mm rockets, 75mm recoilless rifle rounds, 82mm mortars. The camp takes hundreds of rounds daily. The airfield is targeted. Helicopter pads are cratered. Command posts are hit. Living bunkers collapse. Casualties mount. The American artillery crews take heavy losses. Artillery positions are priority targets for North Vietnamese gunners. Counter-battery fire becomes a deadly duel. American 155mm and 175mm guns fire back. Forward observers spot North Vietnamese gun positions. Coordinates are called. Fire missions are executed. But the enemy guns are well camouflaged, dug in, protected, and there are so many of them. For every North Vietnamese gun destroyed 2 more open fire, the siege settles into a grim routine. Morning, artillery barrage. The camp takes 50 to 100 rounds. Defenders scramble to bunkers. Medics treat wounded. Damage is assessed. Afternoon, probing attacks. North Vietnamese infantry moves close to the wire. Test the defences. Machine guns chatter. Mortars fire. The attackers pull back. Evening. Another artillery barrage. Darkness. Sappers try to infiltrate. Bangalore torpedoes are pushed through the wire. Satchel charges are thrown. The defenders fire illumination rounds. Flares reveal enemy soldiers crawling through the grass. Claymore mines detonate. The sappers die or withdraw. Night. Harassing fire. Random shells impact. Sleep is impossible. Exhaustion builds. Day after day, week after week. This is siege warfare, grinding, relentless, designed to break the defenders physically and mentally. Resupply becomes critical. The road from Dak 2 is cut. North Vietnamese forces ambush any convoy that tries to break through. So everything comes by air. Helicopters brave intense anti-aircraft fire to land supplies, C-123. Provider cargo planes make airdrop runs. Pallets of ammunition, food, water, medical supplies tumble from the sky trailing parachutes. Some land inside the wire. Others drift into enemy positions. The North Vietnamese fire at every aircraft. 51 caliber anti-aircraft guns reach up. Tracers arc through the sky. Helicopters take hits. Some crash. The pilots and crews who keep flying these resupply missions show incredible courage. They know every trip might be their last, but without them the camp dies, so they keep flying, day after day, running the gauntlet of fire to keep the defenders supplied. May 24th, a relief column attempts to reach Ben Het. The 212th Company of the 1st Mobile Strike Force Battalion. Montagnard fighters supported by American advisors, they march from Dak to along Route 512. The North Vietnamese are waiting. Ambush. Heavy weapons fire from multiple directions. Mortars, rockets, machine guns. The column takes massive casualties. Warrant Officer Class 2. Keith Payne of the Australian Army Training Team Vietnam is with the force. He rallies the survivors, organises the defence, treats wounded under fire, calls artillery strikes, leads a fighting withdrawal. For his actions this day, Payne will be awarded the Victoria Cross, Australia's highest military honour, but the relief column is shattered. The road to Ben Het remains closed. The siege continues. The defenders are on their own. June 9th, the camp is completely surrounded. North Vietnamese forces have closed the circle. Every route is blocked. Every trail is covered. Ben Het is an island in a sea of enemy forces. The shelling intensifies. Over 5,000 rounds have impacted the camp since the siege began. The defenders live underground. Bunkers become homes. Men emerge only to man fighting positions or conduct essential tasks. The constant bombardment frays nerves. Shell shock sets in. Some men shake uncontrollably. Others become numb. Medics treat physical wounds and psychological trauma. But there is no evacuation for battle fatigue. Everyone stays. Everyone fights. There is no choice. The North Vietnamese employ psychological warfare. Loudspeakers broadcast propaganda. Messages in English and Vietnamese. Or surrender and you will be treated well. The war is lost. Your government has abandoned you. You are surrounded. You will die here. After the loudspeaker messages come artillery barrages. The psychological impact is calculated. Hope offered, then crushed with high explosives. Some CIDG fighters are shaken. They hear the broadcasts in their own language. They know their families are nearby. If the camp falls, what happens to their wives and children? The Green Berets work to maintain morale. We will hold. Reinforcements are coming. American firepower will save us. Air support will destroy the enemy. We just have to hold. And the Montagnards believe. They trust the Green Berets. They have fought together for years. They will not surrender. They will fight to the last round if necessary. June 23rd. The North Vietnamese launch their major assault. 1,500 to 2,000 troops from the 28th and 66th Regiments. This is the main effort. The attack designed to break the camp. The preparation is meticulous. Over weeks the North Vietnamese have been digging trenches, tunnels, Under cover of darkness and artillery fire, they have moved closer and closer to the perimeter. Now those trenches and tunnels reach the wire, go under the wire, reach the outer bunkers. The assault begins with a massive artillery barrage, 450 rounds in rapid succession. The camp is saturated with fire, every position targeted. Ammunition bunkers explode, fuel dumps ignite, buildings collapse. 9 Americans are wounded in the opening barrage, then the infantry attacks. North Vietnamese soldiers emerge from the trenches and tunnels already inside the outer wire. They do not have to cross the kill zone. They're already through the defences. Satchel charges are thrown into bunkers. Explosions tear through defensive positions. Small arms fire erupts at point-blank range. This is close quarters battle, desperate fighting. The CIDG fighters and Green Berets meet the attack with everything they have. M16 rifles on full automatic, M60 machine guns firing until barrels glow, hand grenades, claymore mines detonated at close range. The fighting is savage. Men die within meters of each other. The North Vietnamese press forward. More troops pour from the tunnels. The defenders are being pushed back. Bunkers fall. Positions are overrun. The North Vietnamese loudspeakers broadcast victory messages. Ben Het is falling. The Americans are defeated. This is Dien Bien Phu. But the camp does not fall. The defenders hold. First Lieutenant Michael Linnane, the A-Team executive officer, coordinates the defence. He moves between positions directing fire, calling artillery strikes danger close, organising counterattacks. Where lines buckle, he rushes reinforcements. Where ammunition runs low, he redirects supply. This is small unit leadership at its finest, under intense fire making split-second decisions that mean life or death. The CIDG fighters see Linnane's courage and fight harder. If the American will not run, neither will they. The battle rages for 3 hours. North Vietnamese attacks surge forward. Defenders throw them back, trenches fill with bodies. The kill zone becomes a charnel house. But the camp holds. And then American air power arrives. B-52s, the big bombers from Guam, arc light strikes, 60 bombers dropping 340 tons of ordnance on North Vietnamese positions surrounding the camp. The earth erupts. Jungle disappears in fire and blast. The B-52 strikes are apocalyptic. Entire grid squares cease to exist. North Vietnamese assembly areas are obliterated. Supply dumps explode. Artillery positions are destroyed. Communications are severed. The bombing is so close to the camp that defenders feel the shockwaves. See the mushroom clouds rising. Hear the earth splitting roar. When the bombing stops, the North Vietnamese attack collapses. The troops in the trenches withdraw. The assault is broken. The camp is saved, for now. The cost of the June 23rd battle is heavy. 1 American killed. 6 more wounded. CIDG casualties are higher. Dozens killed. Many more wounded. The camp's medical bunker is overwhelmed. Surgery is performed by flashlight. Plasma and morphine run low. The wounded lie in rows waiting for evacuation. But helicopters cannot land under the artillery fire. The wounded must wait. Some die waiting. The North Vietnamese also suffer. Hundreds killed in the assault. More hundreds killed in the B-52 strikes. But they do not break contact. They pull back to lick their wounds and prepare for the next attack. The siege continues. Days blur together. Artillery, probing attacks, airstrikes, resupply runs, casualties, exhaustion. The defenders are reaching their limit. June 27th. Another major shelling. Nearly 450 rounds impact the camp. The North Vietnamese are trying to break the defenders' will through sheer volume of fire, but the Americans respond with overwhelming firepower. 60 B-52s deliver 1,800 tons of bombs on targets around Ben Het. The jungle for miles is turned into moonscape. Craters overlap. Trees are splintered to matchsticks. The Ho Chi Minh Trail routes near the camp are interdicted. Supply columns are destroyed. The North Vietnamese cannot sustain this level of losses. They cannot operate under such intense bombardment. The siege is costing them more than they can afford. But they are committed. To withdraw now would be admission of defeat, so they stay and take the punishment, hoping the Americans will break first. The South Vietnamese response is critical. This siege is a test of ARVN capabilities. Can South Vietnamese forces relieve a besieged camp without massive American ground support? The answer will influence decisions about Vietnamization, about turning the war over to the South Vietnamese. 7 ARVN battalions are committed to the battle. Nearly 4,000 troops. They push west from Dak To and Kontum, fighting through North Vietnamese blocking forces. The advance is slow. ARVN units take casualties. Some units perform well, fighting aggressively. Others are hesitant. The performance is mixed, but they are coming. They are trying. American advisors embed with the ARVN units, calling airstrikes and coordinating artillery. The firepower advantage is decisive. North Vietnamese units blocking the roads are pounded by airstrikes and artillery. The ARVN battalions push through. Route 5. 12 and Route 579 are the main supply routes. ARVN engineers work to clear mines and repair damage. Convoys form. Supplies are loaded. The first convoy attempts the run to Ben Het. North Vietnamese ambushes. The convoy fights through. Some trucks are destroyed. Others make it. Supplies reach the camp. The siege is not broken, but the camp is reinforced. More convoys follow. Each one takes fire, but they get through. By late June, steady resupply is restored. The defenders are no longer isolated. The North Vietnamese realize the siege has failed. They cannot starve the camp. They cannot break it with artillery. They cannot overrun it with infantry. American air power and ARVN ground forces have prevented the victory the North Vietnamese sought. July 1st. Only 10 shells fall on Ben Het. A dramatic decrease. The siege is ending. July 2nd. Battlefield falls silent. The North Vietnamese break contact, pull back across the border into Laos and Cambodia, withdraw to Base Area 209. The siege is over. 60 days. 2 months of constant artillery. Multiple ground assaults. Psychological warfare. The defenders held. Ben Het did not fall. The casualties are tallied. 1 Green Beret killed, 16 wounded. 1 South Vietnamese Special Forces killed, 7 wounded. 15 ARVN soldiers killed, 70 wounded. 52 CIDG fighters killed, 141 wounded. 23 civilians killed, 11 wounded. The artillery crews also suffered heavily. In total, over 300 casualties among the defenders, a high price. But the camp is still in American hands. The North Vietnamese losses are estimated much higher. Hundreds killed in the ground assaults, more hundreds killed by B-52 strikes and artillery. The 28th Regiment was particularly mauled. Prisoner statements later reveal that the regiment entered the battle with over 1,000 men. After B-52 strikes, they had only 2 companies left, 200 men, 80% casualties, catastrophic losses. The aftermath reveals the scale of the battle. The camp is battered, bunkers collapsed, wire torn, craters everywhere. Unexploded ordnance litters the compound. Engineers arrive to rebuild. Stronger bunkers, better wire, improved defences. More ammunition is stockpiled, more supplies. The lessons learned are implemented. Better communication between the camp and relief forces. Faster air support response. Improved coordination of artillery and airstrikes. The camp that emerges from the siege is stronger than before. But the question remains, was it worth it? Did holding Ben Het accomplish anything strategic? The answer is complex. Tactically, Ben Het was an American victory. The camp held against a determined enemy siege. Superior firepower prevailed. American technology, air support and artillery defeated North Vietnamese infantry and armour. The first tank battle went to the M48s. The siege was broken by B-52s and ARVN reinforcements. These are clear tactical wins. But strategically, what did Ben Het accomplish? The camp was supposed to interdict the Ho Chi Minh Trail, monitor enemy infiltration. After the siege, the North Vietnamese simply used routes further west. The camp could not stop infiltration. It could only observe and call fire missions. And the cost of defending Ben Het was enormous. Hundreds of casualties, massive expenditure of ammunition and bombs, diversion of forces that could be used elsewhere. Was this island of resistance worth the price? The answer depends on perspective. For the defenders, Ben Het represents courage and determination. They held against overwhelming odds. They refused to surrender. They proved that isolated camps could survive if properly supported. This was important for morale, for showing that American positions would not be abandoned, for demonstrating to allies that the US would fight to hold ground. From this perspective, Ben Het was a necessary stand, a line in the sand. But from a broader strategic view, Ben Het highlights the futility of static defense in counterinsurgency warfare. The camp tied down defenders and resources while the enemy simply bypassed it. The North Vietnamese lost the siege, but they continued infiltrating, continued moving supplies, continued building up forces for future offensives. Ben Het was a rock in the stream. The water flowed around it. The tank battle aspects of Ben Het deserve special attention. This was one of the very few direct tank versus tank engagements of the Vietnam War. The American M48s proved decisively superior to the Soviet PT-76s. Better armour, better guns, better optics and night fighting equipment, better crews. The North Vietnamese learned that committing armour piecemeal against prepared American positions was suicidal. They would not make this mistake again. When they used tanks in later offensives like the 1972 Easter Offensive, they would mass them, use them in combined arms operations with infantry, artillery and air defence. The lessons of Ben Het influenced North Vietnamese armour doctrine for the rest of the war. For the American tankers, Ben Het validated their presence in Vietnam. Skeptics had argued tanks were useless in jungle warfare, too heavy for soft ground, too visible targets, limited mobility in dense vegetation. Ben Het proved otherwise. Properly employed in defensive positions, tanks provided devastating firepower and protection. The M48 crews at Ben Het destroyed enemy armour, supported infantry, survived direct hits. The armour saved lives. The 90mm guns killed enemy. Tanks worked in Vietnam when used correctly. This knowledge influenced future deployments. More armour was sent to Vietnam. Tank doctrine was refined. The lessons purchased with blood at Ben Het saved lives later. The Montagnard CIDG fighters at Ben Het deserve recognition. These Highland tribesmen stood and fought for 60 days. They took massive casualties but didn't break. They trusted the Green Berets and fought alongside them with courage and loyalty. After the war, when South Vietnam fell in 1975, the Montagnards were abandoned. The Americans left. The South Vietnamese government collapsed, and the Montagnards, who had fought for the Americans and South Vietnamese, were persecuted by the victorious North Vietnamese. Many fled to the jungle, some were killed, others were imprisoned. The debt owed to the Montagnards was never fully repaid. Ben Het is one more example of indigenous forces fighting bravely for a cause that ultimately betrayed them. The Green Berets at Ben Het exemplified the Special Forces ethos. 12 Americans organising and leading hundreds of indigenous fighters, calling airstrikes, coordinating artillery, treating wounded, fighting when necessary. These were not conventional infantry officers leading regular troops. These were advisors and force multipliers. Each Green Beret was responsible for dozens of CIDG fighters, training them, leading them, keeping them in the fight. The A-Team at Ben Het performed magnificently under extreme stress. They held the camp together through 2 months of siege. They maintained morale, they distributed supplies fairly, they fought when the enemy attacked, and they brought most of their men home alive. This is what Special Forces does. This is their purpose. Ben Het validates the concept. The political impact of Ben Het resonated in Washington and Saigon. The siege occurred during the early phase of Vietnamization. The policy of turning combat responsibility over to South Vietnamese forces while withdrawing American troops. The ARVN performance at Ben Het was mixed. Some units fought well, others were hesitant, but they did relieve the camp, they did break the siege. This provided evidence that Vietnamization could work if properly supported with American air power and advisors. But it also showed the limitations. ARVN forces required enormous support. Without American airstrikes and artillery, they struggled against determined NVA regulars. This pattern would repeat throughout Vietnamization. South Vietnamese forces could win when supported. They often failed when left on their own. The historical memory of Ben Het is overshadowed by larger battles. Khe Sanh gets the attention. The 1968 siege of the Marine Combat Base dominates the narrative about sieges in Vietnam. Ben Het is forgotten, overlooked. But in many ways, Ben Het is more significant. Khe Sanh was a Marine combat base with thousands of defenders and massive support. Ben Het was a Special Forces camp with 12 Americans and some Montagnards. Khe Sanh held for 77 days with the full weight of American military power behind it. Ben Het held for 60 days as an afterthought in the larger war. The defenders at Ben Het fought with fewer resources, less support and less recognition. Yet they held. Their story deserves to be told. The men who fought at Ben Het carried the experience for the rest of their lives. The tankers who destroyed PT-76s in the first American tank battle of the war, the Green Berets who organised the defence during the siege, the CIDG fighters who stood with the Americans. the artillery crews who fired counter-battery missions under constant bombardment, the helicopter pilots who flew resupply missions through anti-aircraft fire, the B-52 crews who dropped 340 tons of bombs saving the camp. Each of these men has a story, each contributed to the defense, and each deserves recognition for standing against the enemy when retreat would have been easier. When surrender might have seemed rational, they stood, they fought, they held. That is the legacy of Ben Het. Today, Ben Het is accessible from the main road stretching west from Dak To. The battlefield is quiet. Jungle has reclaimed much of what was destroyed. Craters remain, rusted metal, unexploded ordnance still buried in the ground. Vietnamese guides can show visitors where the camp stood, where the tanks fought, where the trenches were dug. It is a place of ghosts now. The screams of artillery and crack of rifles have faded, but the memory remains, embedded in the earth, carried by the survivors, preserved in after-action reports and history books. Ben Het deserves to be remembered not just as a battle, but as a symbol of courage under impossible odds, of defenders who refused to break, of a siege that tested men to their limits and found them capable of holding the line. Remember Ben Het. Remember the tank battle. Remember the 60-day siege. Remember the men who fought there, because their story is American history, Vietnam War history, and the story of what happens when small groups of determined men decide that retreat is not an option and surrender is unthinkable. They held against tanks, against artillery, against infantry assaults and psychological warfare. They held, and that is a legacy worth preserving.